5 states are holding primary elections today as the country continues to deal with the coronavirus pandemic and nationwide unrest over the death of George Floyd. Those states are Nevada, North Dakota, South Carolina, West Virginia, and Georgia. In Georgia, there are reports of equipment problems, a lack of training for poll workers, and people having to wait several hours to cast a vote. Former gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams tweeted, "Georgians deserve better. I voted today because of absentee ballot defects. Long lines, inoperable machines, and under-resourced communities are being hurt. Georgia's Secretary of State owns this disaster. He must stop finger-pointing and fix it." For more, let's bring in Latasha Brown. She's the co-founder of the Black Voters Matter Fund. Latasha, thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
So the problems that Stacey Abrams points out sound a lot like the governor's race in 2018. Are you confident the problems Georgians face today will be addressed by November?
I'm not confident that they will be addressed. I know for us and advocates that are doing this work, we're going to demand something different. This is unacceptable. I stood in line for 3 hours today to vote. That's unconscionable. Here we are in a big the biggest health pandemic that we've ever seen in our lifetime. And we're actually going and standing in line for hours at a time. And so I think it is unconscionable that we ask voters, any voters, to go through that process. In many ways, it felt traumatic. And so we knew that this was coming. We know how many voters that are in a district. You have voter registration. It is a colossal failure in terms of planning and the preparation. What was even disheartening is one of the polling sites that I went to, that after I voted, my organization, we actually went around, we had teams going to the various polling sites to make sure that we were providing water, we provided mask, sanitizer, and really talk to folks and really be able to document some of their experiences. And so there was a polling site in particular, which was Adams Park, which is a predominantly African-American polling site, that the machines were down. They did not start the machines until 12:30. Half the day is gone. And so I think that there is a fundamental critical issue that we cannot continue to overlook. You would think that the fact that in 2018, there were so many problems around voter suppression and with the machines working, that in this election cycle, what is interesting is that these are new machines. So now we're having some of the same problems. And I think we've got to look at it. It is a pattern. There continues to be a pattern. And I don't want any voter, whether they're Black, white, Latino, to go through this, right? But I will say the experience was very different, that we actually went to Alpharetta, Georgia, which is in North Georgia, primarily white voters in that area. And it was a seamless process. We saw people go in and out like seamlessly. There wasn't even a line. Yet in my polling site in particular, like I raised, I was there for 3 hours before I could vote. We went to another Black polling site, like I raised, which was the Adams Park. People had been standing in line for 5.5 hours. Something is not right with this process. That if you are the Secretary of State, your job is to make sure that we have efficient and effective systems so people can vote.
So tell me, Latasha, how does specifically the Black Voters Matter Fund work to fight to ensure that everyone's vote is in fact counted?
So we do a number of things. So one, we believe that power is from the ground up, not the top down. And so part of what we do is we work in partnership with grassroots groups who are on the front lines of doing this work, being able to provide some support for them so that they can go out and give information, so that they can actually connect to their base and get their base organized, and also to do some of the things like we did today, which to provide water, to be able to document some of these experiences that are happening as well. Some of the other things we do is really be able to advocate around voting rights and actually work with our partners. We've been working with the Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights to make sure that people have information around the hotline where they can actually call and talk about and share their experience. And so if they need information, we've been also connecting people to links on our links around where they can find out where they can vote. Most importantly, we do a lot of our work, which is power building, where we actually are in communication with voters to really be able to talk about the issues, be able to give them information that they need to make a rooted, educated, informed vote. And then we also want to make sure that we're inspiring people. It is a disheartening process. It is stressful. It is traumatic when people are going into polling places for hours. There's a young woman at one of the sites who is a caregiver. She talked about how she went to her client and helped her to vote, which was on a predominantly affluent white neighborhood. And she was able to get in and out in 7 minutes flat. That means go in, take her client, vote with her client. When we met her, she had been standing in line for 35 minutes. The line had not moved, and people in the line had already been there for 2 hours. And she was saying that she needed to go back to work. She still had her scrubs on. So why is it different, a different experience when she went to assist the person that she's caring for, right? It took only 7 minutes. Yet when she goes to her site to vote, we're now looking at possibility of hours in voting. There's something fundamentally broken. And if we are to have a democracy, we need to make sure that people have access and effective and efficient systems to be able to vote.
So, Latasha, as I'm sure obviously you're aware, there have been these nationwide protests against racial injustice in the wake of the death of George Floyd. Are you at all optimistic that in the wake of his death, the very questions that you have been raising, not just recently, but for years, as you point out, those questions of equality and access to the ballot box will get more serious consideration, especially now that we are in an election year?
So let me tell you what I'm optimistic about. What I am optimistic about is not necessarily those in elected position. I'm optimistic about people that to see that there have been protests in all 50 states. When I'm looking at the protests, I'm seeing multicultural, I'm seeing multi-generational, I'm seeing I'm looking at the reflection of America, and I'm seeing millions of folks around this country that are stepping up saying we deserve and want a different America. And that gives me hope. That's what makes me optimistic, because I think fundamentally, even in the Constitution, it doesn't say we the party. It doesn't say we the political candidate. It says we the people. And so I firmly believe that when people rise up, that when people demand more from their government, when people demand more for their elected official, that's when we see not just transactional change, but when we see transformative change. So I'm extremely optimistic of what I am seeing, the actions led and demands being led by people who are on the ground, who are in the streets, who are literally demanding more for this government, and who are willing to stand and fight for democracy.
I hear you saying that you have faith in those people that are out there protesting. Georgia is one of several states voting today. Are you satisfied with the roster of candidates on the ballot?
I think that I think part of the challenge that we have is that we need more progressive candidates on the ballot. There are some candidates on the ballot that I'm extremely excited about, right? But I think that this is a fundamental, even the issue that we're talking about in Georgia, more so the candidates, it's the process. That ultimately, if people don't have the opportunity to make their candidate of choice, to vote for their candidate of choice, then what's the point? And so more so than just in terms of the candidates, because I think I am seeing one of the things that does give me hope. I'm seeing younger, I'm seeing progressive candidates. You know, it's interesting. I think about Congresswoman Lucy McBath, who is running, that she's in a district, her seat was held by Newt Gingrich. And here it is, an African-American woman who has been vocal about anti-violence is now representing that district. So there is change that is happening. And there are candidates and women in particular who are stepping up. And so I'm really excited about seeing this, seeing more women run, but we need more. We've got so long, we're so far behind. There's much, much more that needs to be done.
Latasha Brown, co-founder of the Black Voters Matter Fund. Latasha, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.